This is an artist on TikTok, and a lot of people have debated this artist's artwork for AI or tracing, etc. And then there was like a call out about this situation as well. It's very interesting, and we can go and dive into this. This is the account in question. They go by the handle Anna Julia TP. Don't send hate to any parties involved, okay, including them, right? This is generally the gist of their account. They post a lot of their artwork, a lot of speed paints. We'll go in order of what was like circulating on social media. This is the very first piece that people were suspicious of, or at least that has been circulating recently. It's this art piece of Mau Mau from Apothecary Diaries. And they paint in ibis paint, and they posted a speed paint where, as you can see in their painting process, it's very color selecty, right? Where like it looks like they're color selecting off of either a color wheel or a pre-existing color palette, and then kind of brush stroking it into parts of the art piece, then color selecting another color, and then going back and brush stroking it in. And like that is a way some people paint. Oil painters do paint like this. Some artists with oil painting as a background do paint like this, etc. People just thought it was a little bit odd because of the way they paint. As in the Mau Mau piece, they painted part of the face, then went to paint the clothing, then went back to the face, and then they went to paint the hair. But one eye is just left unpainted and unfinished. And then they paint the rest of the hair and they leave the eye undone until the very end of the piece, which some people do paint like that. You don't often see people painting one body part and then leaving the other body part alone until the very end of their art process. So people in the comments are debating about this. Somebody says color picking final boss. A lot of the comments are in what I believe is Spanish. Another commenter says it's not AI. It's clearly not AI. I don't know if I can see it because I'm an artist too, but it's clearly not AI, which is another debate that people were having. Some people felt like it was AI where it wasn't. The artist then, in response to somebody stating that the speed paint is fake, uploaded a 5-minute slower speed paint where, you know, we can skip forward and see they basically do have the same painting process. Again, it's an ibis paint, so it's going to be like on the phone, but it does look like they're kind of color selecting painting in, color selecting painting in, which is again, not a sin, right? People do paint this way. And then they have another post where they show a side-by-side of a Mau Mau traditional art piece they've done. We can see kind of how they drew Mau Mau, and then you can see their digital piece of Mau Mau, where you could kind of see the side by side. There is, in my opinion, a bit of a skill difference between the two. Maybe this one was just painted earlier, anatomically speaking, but there is the side by side. So then there's this account by the name of 6XWNTER, or like 6 times winter. And the caption reads, explaining how this girl drew this because people don't believe me that she's tracing and color picking. It says, I drew this little thing to show you guys how easy it is to fake the speed paint. And it looks like they're using the same program, Ibis Paint. So they add a photo and where the line art's supposed to be, the video says to memorize it and trace over after deleting the photo by clicking, then go back and repeat. So they upload an image of a little bunny that looks to be hand sketched out. And they show another method where like they delete the image, trace the line work, add it again, line it up, delete it, put it back in again. Because Ibis Paint is a program that does record your drawings when you're painting from what Google says. If this is the method used, this is an extremely tedious method to go back and forth like this. Upload the image, remember how the line works, delete the image, draw it again, upload the image, delete it. It doesn't mean it's not impossible, but this is definitely a really long-winded thing. Now, in this expose that this Winter account made, people in the comments are defending the artist. They're like, I didn't know color picking was illegal. Yeah, tracing is wrong, but I don't think color picking is that bad. Other commenters are on the side of the account saying things like color picking is still bad if you color pick everything. And why is everyone ignoring the fact that this is not about color picking, but it's about tracing? So the artist, in another video, the artist claims that they draw using the grid method. If you don't know what the grid method is, you take an art piece and then you draw a grid on it, and then you transfer that drawing grid by grid to another media piece, basically. So kind of if I were to like demonstrate, it essentially would look something like this. Kind of have like a grid like this, and then this is our new grid, right? This looks so bad for drawing a fish. Okay, this is really bad. But like, you know, there's like an eyeball, or there's an eyeball here, and then a fish smiley thing here, or whatever, right? Fish. The way the grid method would be is like, okay, grid 1 has nothing. Grid 2, okay, grid 2 has like this part. There's a circle here. All right, grid grid 3, okay, it looks like this. All right, grid 4, there's this in grid 4. So it is a method to basically like copy an artwork onto another piece of media. This is often done by, an example is mural artists, right? They will draw a piece out and then draw a grid onto it. And then because you draw it small, and then when you're painting a mural, it's typically on a big wall, you make the grid, and then it helps you transfer the image that you drew onto the wall without there being a loss in quality or, things warping because suddenly the wall is really big, right? It's also done by traditional artists. They will maybe take a photo, put a grid on the photo, and then use that to transfer the sketch onto their canvas so they can then paint and, again, not lose any of the anatomy and stuff like that. So this is like a video of their process painting another art piece, which is the grid method. They did draw grid by grid, I suppose. A lot of the comments are in Spanish, and on your phone you can go translate it, but a fair amount of people in the comments were like, wait, that's not how the grid method works exactly. But that was one of the artist's defenses essentially to it. My personal 2 cents, a lot of the sentiment about the grid method is that it doesn't apply when it comes to digital art. As in, is it a method that artists use? Mural artists, traditional artists, yes. But the point of the grid method is to take something and essentially completely replicate it onto your canvas. Essentially tracing it, kind of, right? And again, the ethics are very different when it comes to like mural art, when it comes to painting a photo versus digital art. When you take somebody's digital art, put a grid on their artwork, and then use that to then copy that directly onto your canvas. You are essentially copying somebody's digital art onto your canvas. There is that discourse. Then comes this Madoka Magica piece, which reads again very suspicious, because this one is very suspicious in the way that it's painted, because this has to be rage bait. The artist has to know that by painting like this, people are for sure gonna comment on the process of their painting. To be honest, nobody paints like this. Leaving half the head unpainted, but painting in, fully rendering in the bottom half of the bangs, and then leaving the top half completely empty, and then to go back and fill it in. Need I even say the fact that they completely painted in the face and then did the sketch after fully rendering the face? You almost always sketch first, render second. You typically don't render first, sketch, and then continue to render. And yeah, like beginners definitely have like an exploration in their process, trying to explore things. But if you are capable of drawing at this level, you very likely do not draw like that. You very likely don't. This one is honestly the most wild, the most egregious one to me. Completely render the face in first. And again, I want to add too, they render in all the shadows and highlights for an object that isn't even held. They have like all the shadows and water droplets on their face, and there is no water and there is no gemstone they're holding. It's just gone. It's not there. They have another piece where again, the process is a bit odd, where they sketch barely part of the character, then start rendering, then render in part of the background, then draw a bunch of floating heads, and then continue drawing the rest of the body. Now again, right? Every artist has their own process. If you're a beginner artist and this is your process, da 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 da. And I wouldn't be harping so much on the process if we didn't have an absolute smoking gun. Multiple, in fact. Because this Mau Mau piece, right, where people were like, hey, something is off about this piece, something's a bit suspicious, etc. In the caption, and translated by TikTok, it says, I used digital art as a reference found on Pinterest. Author unknown, could have been generated by AI. I used it only for inspiration with personal changes. So again, we can again debate the ethics of crediting Pinterest, being like, I found it on Pinterest, versus actually going out of your way to find the artist. But secondly, because this is the piece that was referenced, it is exactly 1-to-1. There is a possibility the art piece could have been AI generated, this one. I looked up and down, left and right to try to find the original artist. If there is one, could not find it. There are a few suspicions of it potentially being AI. One of them, given the fact that Mau Mau has like a bunch of eyelids on one eye, regular eyelids on the other eye. Again, there are real people with uneven eyelids. Sometimes like my eyelids get uneven. That's just how it is. Oftentimes artists don't tend to draw eyes like that. Kind of like differences in the ways the eyes are rendered, etc. But can't really clarify that. The origin of this is a bit suspicious, but I do think personally it's a bit disingenuous to say I referenced from a photo I found on Pinterest and I took liberties to change it, because there's no liberties in the change. The only thing that was changed is the color of the flowers, which in my opinion is not enough to change to call it a reference. This is basically directly traced. That was not the only piece, because the Madoka Magica piece, this one, that has the most suspicious rendering process, this is the original artist. I found them on Pixiv, and the artist goes by Akita, and this one's 1-to-1. This one, somehow, when I screenshotted it, it got really faded. I don't know why. When you look at it side by, it's literally directly color selected and completely traced. Somehow they're using the grid method or something. It's 1-to-1, and I'm gonna be so for real. You can't claim grid method when you're taking somebody else's artwork, digital artwork, putting a grid on it, copying that onto your canvas, and directly color selecting off of their art piece and painting it exactly how they painted it on your art piece. Is it hand painted? Likely, but this is essentially tracing with like a bunch of extra steps because it is identical to the pieces that these artists made. And this piece here, again, this one with a very suspicious coloring method where they draw in 3 fully rendered floating heads, part of the background. The background's not complete because they only draw like 1 inch of the background. Then they go to color in like around the head. Yeah, we have this. Toilet Bound Hanako-kun anime sequel announced with new visual. And we also have this tweet as well. Hanako-kun info posting it on their Twitter page, which is this exact artwork posted March 30th. And that is this. It is directly traced. The thing is, right, like, is tracing over people's artwork as an art study a method that artists use to learn? Yes, artists do that to learn, most definitely. Don't post it and claim it as your own. That is the issue here, right? The issue isn't that they color selected off somebody's art and then used it to study how to paint, how the colors were selected. The issue was they posted it and they claimed it as their art when it's not. In this one, the Maoma one, they said, oh, reference Pinterest, it could be generated by AI. I only used it for inspiration. That is the issue. The fact that they're claiming to have originally made this on their own when it is essentially glorified tracing off of people's work. That is the issue. If you kind of trace the study and you don't post it, you just keep it to yourself as a way to learn, that's fine. The posting and claiming it's yours is the problem. And the obvious denial about it. On a complete side note, this is not a good way to learn the method they're doing specifically. Selecting color, coloring a little bit, selecting color, coloring a little bit. This doesn't teach you anything. Ways that you can learn off of other people's artwork is, you know, like selecting the colors and seeing how they look together so you can better understand how the color palette was built. Or, you know, sketching the body poses, like, you know, drawing like stick figures and stuff over how they drew the characters so you can learn how they did the proportions, how they did the posing, etc. These are ways you can learn. But when you color select, trace, like color select, color it a little bit, color select, you're essentially playing like a very, very elaborate game of color me mine, which doesn't teach you how to draw better if your intention was to try to learn how to draw better. Again, don't send hate to this artist because there is a chance where they think it's completely right? There's a chance that they most definitely think, yeah, this is totally normal referencing. I don't see anything wrong with it. Ignorance is bliss. You know, that could definitely be possible, but this is just for people who look at their account and are like, wait, how did they draw so well, so quickly? Well, the answer is they did it. They selected. But the final thing that you can really tell is their art style is all over the place. As in, every single art piece looks like somebody else drew it, right? This piece looks extremely different from this piece, which looks really different from this one, which looks really different from this one, which looks really different from the Mau piece. When art styles start diverging on one person so far, and again, people have different art styles, right? Just because you draw anime one day doesn't mean you can't draw realism the next day. But when it diverges so much, where it looks like different people drew it, likely it's because it could have been traced off of different people. I'm curious on your thoughts about the situation. Do you think it's just the grid method or some color picking, or is this just tracing in a different form? I personally suspect that the artist is pretty young slash is intentionally rage baiting with the way they're kind of being like, oh yeah, this is reference from Pinterest. I changed it in my own style. I swear. But again, don't send hate to them at the end of the day. Just show love to the actual affected artists because it's likely rage bait. If you like this video, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out. And check me out on Coffee and VGen. I sell digital art there for streamers and creators. I also stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays at 6 p.m. PST. And I have a coffee shop. So yeah, I hope to catch you guys there or in another one of my videos.